Credit cards. These things right here have made me over 6 figures. To be honest, it could help anyone make 6 figures. These little things right here. But first of all, I have to show you how you can get funded in the next 30 days in order for you to monetize this credit. By the end of this video, you're gonna know how to get over $205,000 funded in the next 30 days. And also how to make 5 to 10K from monetizing credit cards. Also, I'm giving you my $213,000 credit card sequence, which has credit cards, lines of credit that I personally applied for, got approved. Gonna give you guys everything. The data points, everything that you need is gonna be in this video. So you're pretty much getting 2 plays, and both of them are helping you get over $200,000 in funding. And I know this works because obviously one of them I've ran myself and the other I have done for other people. And by the way, you can do this with 0 out-of-pocket costs. The only thing you're gonna need is what I'm gonna give you right now. Real quick, who's this for? A, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner that needs funding. And B, those who appreciate time and location freedom. Credit can give you both those things once you know how to monetize it. So let's get started on what we're covering today. First is the exact sequence that you can run to get funded. All the cards, all the banks, all the data points, no gatekeeping. And second is the most wide open money-making opportunity that no one's really talking about. So let's get started. So I'm gonna start by saying that anything that you guys wanna do on the business side, your personal credit is everything. It's the main thing that matters here. Me personally, I've been able to access over $820,000 in credit in my 20s, all with just leveraging my personal credit score. I don't have a crazy business credit profile built out, but my personal credit is A1. Even if you're trying to go just for the 0% business credit cards or the no doc business loans lines of credit, your personal profile is what's gonna carry you across the finish line. Now, if you have bad credit, that's fixable, but just remember, this is your foundation. All right, so before you can even get funded, let me give you the data points that you need for banks to even, qualify you. This chart right here is one of my favorite ways to show the 6 factors of credit that make up your score and your credit profile. And just an FYI, the report matters more than the score. A lot of people are always focused on like 700 credit score, 800 credit score. The report is what the underwriters are looking at. I've seen people with 800 plus credit scores get denied just because they have a crappy profile built out. So have this before you even attempt any kind of funding. Number 1, utilization under 20%. This applies to each individual personal credit account that you have, specifically revolving credit. This doesn't apply to installment credit, so things like loans and stuff like that. But anything that's revolving, like a credit card, you wanna have low utilization on that. Number 2, 100% payment history. It's pretty obvious. If banks see that you're paying things on time, they're more than willing to lend you money. Number 3, no derogatories. That means collections, charge-offs, repossessions, evictions, avoid all those things. You wanna have an average age of 1.5 years on your credit report. If you're not sure how to check this, go to places like MyFICO or Experian.com, not sponsored, and it'll show you your average age in there. And I'll show you guys an example a little bit later too. You want 3 to 4 primary accounts reporting on your personal credit. And this could be a mix of credit cards, lines of credit, student loans, a mortgage, an auto loan, as long as they're primary accounts, meaning they are under your name, not someone else's, not trade lines, not authorized users. And ideally, you would want 1 to 2 cards with limits anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 reporting on your credit. If you struggle with getting high limits, I have an entire play called High Limit Hacks. I'm gonna link that video down below. It's literally what I've used to get my siblings who are in their early 20s to get 10,000 plus credit limits on their own credit cards. Anyways, back to this. You want less than 3 inquiries on each credit bureau, specifically in the past 6 months. If these inquiries are, a year old, a year and a half old, they don't really weigh as much. And ideally, if you have all these things that I just mentioned, you wanna have a 750 plus bank card FICO score. Now, you can get funded with scores in the low 700s, even sometimes in the high 600s if you have a strong profile. But 750 plus is pretty much where you're kind of guaranteed approvals at this point. Now, this right here is a near perfect profile. You have a credit score that's in the 800s. You have 19 accounts that are reporting. Remember, I only mentioned you need about 3 to 4. You have 1% utilization, 186,000 in personal credit limits, no collections, no negatives. They have 8 inquiries, but if you notice, none of these are in the past 6 months, so it's all good. Average age is 5 years on this profile. Now, this right here is the perfect profile, to be honest. And the reason I'm sharing this with you guys is so you get insight on what exactly I'm looking at when analyzing a credit report to see if it's even fundable. And real quick, let's talk about relationships because they matter. I'm talking about banking relationships. I feel like this is gonna be the best way for you guys to remember this. You can't sleep with them without taking them on a date. It is harder to get funding if you do not have relationships established with these banks. Some banks, by the way, this doesn't apply to all banks. Just like with some people, you can sleep with them without going on a date. Same thing with the banks. Is it possible to get funding without a relationship? Yes. But your odds of approval and access to higher limits comes from having these relationships established. It's just like dating, literally all about trust. Now, these are some of the bigger banks that you want to start building relationships with. These are the guys that are going to give you some very generous limits. So you got Chase, American Express, US Bank, PNC. It is hard to get credit cards with PNC if you do not have any kind of relationship with them. Same thing with Wells Fargo. They're not gonna offer you any of their business credit cards without an account. Same with Bank of America. KeyBank is another one. And lastly, I would say about 90% of banks that are underwritten by Elon also require a relationship. Believe it or not, sometimes the difference between a 10 to 20K approval is just having that account, that relationship established and seasoned. All right, enough on that. I'm gonna give you guys a live walkthrough of a really, really good funding sequence that you can run today, regardless of what state you're in. I'm gonna call this a universal sequence just because it works everywhere in the US for about 95% of the cards that I'm gonna talk about in here. By the way, this is not a BS sequence and this is not a made up 205,000. I have personally, like I said earlier, I have ran this for myself and with other people as well. So let's start. First, GM Business Credit Card. I love this card because it is a soft pull with Equifax, which is the least pulled credit bureau out of all the bureaus, meaning the likelihood of you having inquiries on there are extremely low. And the best part is, since it's a soft pull, they don't put an inquiry on there as well. You don't need to lock your credit bureau in order to get the soft pull. That's just how they run the application. Now, the reason why I like putting this card at the beginning of the sequence is because, like I said, you don't get an inquiry from it. So it's essentially a risk-free credit card. You can apply for it, know exactly what limit you're gonna get approved for, if you're even gonna get approved. And even once you accept the card, no inquiry. I'd go as far as saying, pause this video, open up a different browser real quick, run the application, and let me know what you get approved for. As long as you meet the credit requirements we talked about earlier, obviously. Now, being in the space for a while, the limits that you can expect with this GM card are gonna range anywhere from 5 to 25,000. And at the time of this recording, the 0% is for about 9 months. It used to be 12 months, now it's 9 months. Next card in the sequence, we have American Express. Now, on the business side, Amex has two 0% cards. One of them is the Business Cash, one of them is the Business Plus. If you care about travel and earning points that are redeemable towards travel, get the Business Plus. If you care about cash back, get the Business Cash. I wouldn't recommend getting both on this sequence. But what I did throw in here is a charge card. In this case, I put the gold card. The reason for the gold card is because I think it's more valuable than the platinum card or the green card. It just has better multipliers and it's going to work for more business owners. You get good multipliers on gas, on dining, on ad spend. It's a well-rounded business credit card. Now, the cool thing with Amex is that you can get both of these with just one inquiry or no inquiries. The way you get it with no inquiries is if you're already in the American Express ecosystem, they're not gonna hard pull your credit anymore. It's just gonna be a soft pull on Experian. If you're not in the Amex ecosystem, they will hard pull your Experian and they'll try to do TransUnion sometimes. So the best way to avoid that second pull is just lock your TransUnion. If you don't know how to lock your TransUnion, go to Google, type in free TransUnion freeze. You create an account, takes about 5 minutes from start to finish, and you can go ahead and lock your TransUnion there. Again, you only need to do this if you are not in the Amex ecosystem and you are gonna get this first inquiry, but you only wanted to pull from one bureau. You can double dip, meaning you can use that same soft or hard pull to get both of these cards. Now, in the past, people used to get like 4, 5, 6 Amex cards in a single day. I don't recommend that anymore as of 2024, just because if they see that you're running all these applications, they could end up closing them all out and not approving any of them. And a little play that I want to throw in there for American Express that most people don't know is that you can actually merge your limits. So let's say you already have a $10,000 business cash card. The 0% ran out, let's say a year ago. Now, let's say you apply for this Business Plus and you get approved for another $10,000. You can now take about $9,000 from your old business cash card, the one that used to have the 0%, add it to this new Business Plus card, and now you have a jumbo limit of $19,000, all at 0%. Expected limits, usually with Amex, if you don't have a relationship established, you'll see that you'll start off with about $2,000 as a credit limit. And on the higher end, it could be about 25, 30K. Now with the gold card, since it's a charge card, it technically has a spending power, not a hard set limit. So just keep that in mind. Next, we have the Chase Ink Cash and the Chase Ink Unlimited. You can also double dip Chase to get 2 ink cards on the same day with the same inquiry, by the way. Now this card will require a hard inquiry and there's unfortunately no way around that, even if you're using like relationship bankers. But the thing is, you can remove that inquiry. And by the way, if you need to know how to remove inquiries in 24 hours with Experian, the play is actually inside my free Discord in the resources section. If you want to hop in Discord, it'll be linked down below. I don't know how much longer this 24-hour Experian inquiry play is going to work, but while it's still there, take advantage of it. Anyways, back to the sequence. One thing about Chase is that when you're getting their business ink cards, they're also going to try and hard pull both Experian and TransUnion. Same play that you did with American Express where you locked your TransUnion. Do the same with Chase. That way they only pull your Experian. And then you go ahead and wipe that Experian inquiry. Chase tends to be very generous. Limits can range anywhere from as low as 5K upwards of 30,000. If you have a strong rapport and a good relationship, those limits can go as high as 50,000. But if you're trying to run up a bag, definitely run the double dip play. So get both cards on the same day with that same inquiry. And usually what you get on one card, you'll get on another. So if you get approved for 25K on one, you'll probably get 25K on the other. So wrapping that up, you're expecting on the low end to get about 19K in approvals with these 5 credit cards. And on the high end, as high as 135,000. And with only 1 or 2 inquiries from this whole thing. And the best part is those inquiries are removable. So technically you can get all of these with no inquiries by the time everything is said and done. Best part is you've already gotten about 100,000 plus, and we haven't even touched TransUnion and Equifax yet.
But wait, there's more!
All right, so we got those cards on the previous slide, but we're not done quite yet. I wanna make sure that I give you guys different options on here in case you run into a scenario where you have to skip one of those previous banks. So with that being said, next we have PNC. Now I do need to mention that PNC does require a business bank account to get approved for their business credit card, and they're in almost a lot of the states in the US, but not all of them. So this is a little quick disclaimer on PNC. Make sure that they're in your state. The other thing is they will do a hard pull on your Experian report, and they are inquiry sensitive. So you want to make sure that if you ran up the play from the previous slide, you have no inquiry, so you can go ahead and run it up with these guys. Expected limits can range anywhere from 5 to 20K. They're really chill about giving you limit increases over the phone without doing an inquiry. You just got to speak to the right rep to get that done. Next, we have US Bank. You have the Business Platinum and you have the Business Triple Cash. Now, the reason I added both of these to the sequence is because you can double dip an inquiry to get both. And since we're on the page of US Bank, I do need to give you guys a play, like a little loophole to get into US Bank just because they don't have branches in every state. So the thing about US Bank is you can get their business credit cards without having an account established. The problem with that is that the limits tend to be really low when you do that. So my best advice, and this comes directly from my US Bank relationship banker, is open up a business checking account with them. If they're not in your state, the way around that is to open up a brokerage account, like an investing stock account with them. That is open to all 50 states. So once you open up that account, you basically get your foot in the door with US Bank, and then you can go ahead and open up the business checking account or the personal checking account with them. So just a little play there. US Bank will do a hard pull on your TransUnion. So at this point, this is the first time we're actually hitting the TransUnion bureau. And unfortunately, there's no way to avoid that inquiry. You're gonna have to take it. Now, to be honest with you guys, I wouldn't get both of these US Bank cards on the same run unless you're really trying to maximize your sequence and get as much as possible. I would just get one, maybe like the Business Platinum, because they have 18 months of no interest. And then once that's over, after those 18 months pass by, go ahead and apply for the other one afterwards. I've noticed that most people, when they get a bunch of 0%, they get a lot of it and they only use maybe half of it, and then it becomes harder in the future, like 2-3 years later, because you've already exhausted a lot of your 0% options because you applied for everything at the start. So just make sure you're playing that out very strategically. Learn to save your 0% because you will need it later. Now, expected limits. I mentioned this before, but they do give lower limits sometimes, as low as 1K. But with the relationship established and being in good terms with US Bank, you can see limits anywhere from 20 to 25,000. So with those three, expected anywhere from 7K on the low end, 70K high end. And with these three cards, you got one inquiry from PNC, the Experian one, which is removable, and you did get one inquiry from TransUnion for the US Bank credit cards. Now that one's also removable, but it is a lot harder, so I'm not really gonna get into that right now. But all of this for a grand total of $205,000 in funding. Worst case scenario is about 26,000 if you're dealing with a really bad credit profile. So pretty much you got 6 to 8 cards, you got them all with 1 to 2 inquiries max. And that's just one of the sequences. I'm about to give you guys another one in a second here. My own personal sequence from last year.
But wait, there's more!
By the way, I'm not done yet with this sequence. Between all these cards, you're getting about 12 to 18 months of no interest, so 0%. At the time of this recording, all the sign-up bonuses that are available here, you're getting about 215,000 American Express points, about 150,000 Chase points. That's a total of 365,000 points. Now, if you cashed out these 365,000 points, worst case scenario, you're getting about 3K in cash back that you can do whatever you want with. Obviously, if you use them for travel, they're worth a lot more. At a 3 cent per point valuation, that's about $11,000 in travel. Just to give you guys a perspective, I flew in business class from the US to Japan, round trip. I think I spent less than 100,000 points. And that same flight was costing about, I think it was $8,000. So I saved $16,000. Now, I'm gonna give you my $213,000 sequence that I ran up last year. And before I show you guys all the banks and stuff, I do wanna say this sequence will not work for everyone. I was able to get some of these accounts because of my LLC being 5 years old. If you go out and buy something like an H corporation, you could possibly run this up. But another thing I need to mention is that the underwriting requirements that we had last year are different than the underwriting requirements that we have this year. Some of these accounts might be easier to get approved for now. Some of them might be harder. And depending on when you're watching these videos, some of these accounts may not even exist anymore. Anyways, with that being said, here is my sequence. First of all, we have the GM business credit card. I practice what I preach. I put it at the top of my sequence because it is a soft pull on Equifax, just like I mentioned before. Here in the state of Texas, we have Truist Bank. If you have Truist in your state, they will pull your Equifax. They got me approved for $20,000. Next, I did a Chase Inc. card. That one, I did it through my relationship banker. Got approved for $65,000 there of 0%. That was a pretty big one. That was convenient. Now, since I ran it through my RM, they had to do 2 bureau pulls for this one, unfortunately. But usually when you're doing it online, you can lock your TransUnion so they only pull your Experian. Now, I was testing out lines of credit. So last year, I got approved for a Wells Fargo business line of credit for $15,000, which was actually really low, and they were supposed to bump it up to, I believe, $40,000. I sent them all the documents they needed. They told me they were gonna get it done. And to be honest with you guys, I actually never followed up. So the line of credit is just sitting there at $15,000. Bank of America, I also got a business line of credit approved. That one was at $40,000. And for that one, they did a hard pull on my TransUnion. Next, we have the US Bank business credit card. I actually have that in the previous sequence that I gave you guys. That was a $20,000 approval. Pull TransUnion. Next is the PNC business credit card, the green one, the 0% one that I showed you on the previous sequence. I actually got denied for this one, and the reason was actually somewhat silly. All I had to do was go in branch to actually overturn this application. Now, at the time, I had just moved back to Texas, and I think I was carless for some days. And I got lazy, I didn't go, and I ended up taking the L on this one, but I could have gotten this application approved. That ended up being a hard pull on my Experian, but I took the L on that one. And then the last 2 cards I ran up was Wells Fargo launched a brand new business credit card last year, and they were giving out a bag. The good thing is I've had a relationship established with them for like about 2-3 years at this point. So as soon as I saw that, ran up an application, got 30K on one, 18,000 on the other. And this was all 0% for about 12 months. Both were hard pulls on Experian, but I was not complaining. That's just $48,000 with one bank right there. Now, if you guys go back and look at the sequence, you'll notice that the first one, again, soft pull with Equifax, so there was no inquiry that showed up. Truist, at this point, we got 1 inquiry on Equifax. With the Chase card, we got 1 on TransUnion, 1 on Experian. So now we have 1 on each bureau. Just kind of keep track with me here. With the Wells Fargo, now we have 2 on Experian. With BOA and US Bank, we now have 3 on TransUnion. The first one being from Chase. So this is 1, 2, 3. At this point, I was like, okay, cool. We're done with TransUnion. I have to avoid any more TransUnion pools. We can only do Equifax and Experian, which leads me to these last 2 here with Wells Fargo being Experian and Experian. And keep in mind, you can remove the Experian inquiries. We talked about this earlier in the video. You also need to know some common mistakes that most people make. First is trying to do all the applications in one day. You want to apply one by one as the approvals go. So that means if you get 2 denials in a row, you need to pause, take a step back and see, like, did anything change within my credit profile? Did I submit something that was wrong on my application? Because you'd be surprised, a lot of people, they put in their name incorrectly, their social incorrectly, and that gets them denied. The other thing is maybe your application went into pending status because the bank needs to verify some kind of information, whether it's personal or on the business. So call them up, and if they need to verify anything, send it over to them. You always want to know if you've been approved or denied before you move on to the next application. At least that's a best practice that I like to follow. The only time you want to do an application and then do the next one and then do the next one and do the next one on the same day as if, again, you're getting approved every single time on that same day. The other thing is not hitting up reconsideration. So you do this if the application gets denied, or again, if it goes into a pending status, you need to submit something, or if you got a low limit and you want to bump it up, always hit up reconsideration. Another thing is applying in the wrong order. You guys have no idea how many people reach out to me needing help for funding after they've tried to do it themselves because they failed at it. They didn't do the right cards, they didn't do the right order. Now they have a ton of inquiries on their credit report that they don't even know how to take off. Just make sure you're always setting up the sequence the right way. Because if you're doing this wrong, you could actually end up getting your other accounts shut down. Lastly, we have locking and unlocking the right credit bureaus. This I pretty much, covered earlier while explaining the sequence, but it's great for, avoiding some unnecessary inquiries. Now, for those of you who stuck around and who don't have short attention spans, how can you use all this credit and all these things we just talked about to make money from it? I'm glad you stuck around. I'm going to show you real quick. Now, let's say you take this round of funding that I just gave you and you help someone else get approved for it. Someone who does not have this knowledge, they don't know how to, run a business funding, they don't know how to credit stack, or they just don't have the time to figure all this out. Because believe it or not, a lot of people that I work with, that I get funded, are people who just don't have the time to do all this and figure it out. They're too busy running their business. Oh, that's where you come in and you help them get access to this capital. Now let's say worst case scenario, you don't get them approved for this $205,000 that I just talked about. Let's say you only get them $80K approved. Very, very doable with the two sequences that I just talked about. Now, after you get them the $80K, you get 10% of that. So that's pretty much $8,000 that's paid to you. But you're probably wondering, like, how is that so? How do you get paid $8,000 from that $80,000 approval? So first of all, there's people out there called funders. These funders help people get funded, specifically with loans, lines of credit, and 0%. And the thing is, these funders charge a 10 to 20% success fee. So by you helping someone get approved for these 0% cards or these loans or lines of credit, you can become a funder and get paid from it. And in this case, you got $8,000 from funding one person. Now let's take that scenario and say you can find one person every month that needs funding. And trust me, there's a lot of people out there that need funding. Do you know how many people are trying to start businesses? A lot. Or do you know how many people who have businesses and need more money to scale their business? A lot. So you repeat this process 12 times, once every month with just one person. Well, worst case scenario, you just made $96K. Now, if you're better than the average funder and you can get someone approved for $100K instead of $80K, take 10% of that $100,000. What do you get? You get $10,000. Well, now you're doing $120K a year. If you're a savage, you can get them $200K each. Now this is a savage mode. This is, not everybody's gonna get the $200K for each client unless you're getting really good clients with really good profiles and you know how to run this thing aggressively. But I just gave you the sequence on how to get $200K in funding. So 10% of that $200,000 is $20,000. That is your take-home pay. It's almost $250,000 that you're making in a year. But what is the downside to all this? Well, to be honest, there are a lot of people who have bad credit out there. And there's a lot of people you won't be able to work with because they have crappy profiles. That $200K in funding or $150,000 is not going to be as accessible for everyone. But there will be those unicorns, I like to call them, where they have excellent profiles and they're ready to go, ready to get funded, and you will get that $200K plus. This isn't made up. I managed to get myself over $250,000 in funding almost every single year, and I post about it on the socials. I have receipts, I have proof, I can pull up all of my accounts if I need to. Other issues I see people run into is how to find clients, how to get them to pay, how to create the right offer for them, how to ensure that they're going to get approved, right? Like the actual requirements that banks have to approve a lot of these applications, how to fund them properly, like what cards to apply for, where they can't specifically run some of those banks or cards that we previously talked about, what to do after they get funded, like overturning applications, getting them approved, getting higher limits, how to liquidate credit cards, so going from credit to cash, how they can invest their 0% credit and make money from it. There is a solution to that, and I'm gonna show you guys real quick what it is. I'm gonna click here. Boom. So this thing here, I call it the OPM checklist. It's literally got everything that you need to get funded and monetize credit. So like, make profit from credit cards, having good credit. Let's say you don't know how to get clients, how to find them. Well, you go to the client section, it's all right here. How to set up your offer correctly in the offer section. In the downloads, if you need contracts, any tools, any trade lines, it's all in here. It's gonna be in the download section. We're gonna be adding on to this thing. Not sure how to price things, you're gonna go to pricing section, fundable file. It's a literal checklist with videos on everything that you need to fund someone. I also have a section out here called not fundable files. And it's basically, if you ever run into a scenario where someone is not fundable, what are some things that you can do to either hide their utilization, remove inquiries if you need to remove inquiries, if you need to strengthen their profile, boom, it's in there. This is the best parts, the frameworks. I have credit analysis here where I break down good profiles, bad profiles. I have a list of all the banks and their rules. This all links to different videos that you can watch. We got the business sequences. The universal one, which is the one that I just gave you guys on the 205K in funding. Sequences that only run Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. You could literally watch all three of these and pull like 2 or 3 cards from each of them and just run your own thing. No PG, no credit check, meaning just using your business credit. Business loans, business lines of credit. There's so much, man. If you go to the bottom, we have application tips, things to like consider when you're filling out these applications so you can like maximize the limits that you get and lower the percentage of denials. It's all there. It's all, I don't need to keep going. Like if you're in a scenario where you're stuck and you're not sure like, yo, is this a good sequence to run? Successful sequence audit, you send it over to me, boom. I will literally like review your sequence. It's all here. It's pretty fail-proof. That's just the funding stuff. All these other things are just kind of add-ons. Funding network, we will fund people for you and pay you out for it. You need liquidation for your credit cards, so go into credit to cash, it's in there. You got turnkey trade lines, basically how to make money from trade lines, we help you out with that. How to get relationship bankers, the whole travel hacking shebang. It's literally all in there. If you made it this far, I appreciate you guys watching. If you want to be part of this VIP community, you can click the link in the description below. Now, at the time of you watching this, you need to check if we are currently accepting new members or not. I will say this, it is a paid group and we only accept a few qualified people every few months that we reopen. The reason we do this is because you'll notice that a lot of people who come out of this group, they're all applying the information and actually profiting from it. And to keep our success rate high, I need to minimize the amount of people that we let into this thing. This isn't one of those groups where there's like hundreds of people and then you jump on calls and you can't even ask your questions. It's nothing like that. It's very small, very intimate, but the goal is for everybody to win. Anyways, if you stuck to the end, I appreciate you guys. Even if you're not an OPM, the information that has been given to you with the sequences that have been provided, you can take that for yourself, fund someone else, make some money from it, see that it actually works, and let me know how it went. I'll see you in the next one.